Hi everyone, it's Karsten. Today we're going to tie a simple parachute dry. It's a orange spinner flavored dry fly. I hope you enjoy it. The hook we have in the vise today is an Ahrex FW501 in a size 12. It's a dry fly barbless hook. You're going to be using Semperfli waxed A dot in orange and lay down a foundation to the point of the hook. And at this point we're going to flatten our thread because we want to keep things slender. Now we're going to proceed to our tail tie-in point, keeping things nice and slim and uniform. Park our thread. Our tailing material is going to be this beautiful Whiting Farms CDL. It's a dark Pardo Cocktailion. Great thing with this product is that you receive the entire cape, or you can buy the entire cape. You can also get it in tailing packs. We're going to preen away roughly 12 or so barbs. Once we align these tips, we're going to grab them and preen them away. We're going to chop off these curly bits to keep things aligned. We're measuring against the shank of the hook and we're aiming for the entire length of the hook, including the eye. Seeing these as spinner tails. Now we're going to create a point of intersection by holding our material perpendicular to the hook. Come up and over that point of intersection. Now we're going to allow the thread to carry that material on top of the hook shank. And we're going to travel to the rear, trying to keep everything spread evenly and on top. And now we're going to get our nail and drive those long tails up to splay them. And we're going to come around the back and jam that last wrap that we placed under the tails in there, just so that it cocks those tails up and gives them a really nice spread. Now we're going to cut forward in front of our thread. I'm going to keep all these materials on top and bind them down right to our tie-in point for our post. And that tie-in point is going to be at the 80% mark, or 20% if you're going from the front of the hook. Now, posting material is this TMC Aerowing. It comes off the card in strands, and you can use multiple strands. We're just going to use one. I'd like a thinner post. And we're going to use this last wrap to trap that in place. So we just fed that up there. So we just split the material, feed it up, position it exactly where we want it. And so we've got one wrap essentially trapping that in place, our last wrap. I'm going to come up and over and do one more wrap. Now we're going to grab both legs and just sort of wriggle them and pull up. That's to make sure that both of those turns are centered now. And now we're going to put maximum tension on, come up and over, do one X wrap, up and over, do a second X wrap. Before we release the tension, we're going to put a turn in front and behind that post. They look like spinner wings at this point. Now we're going to gather those up and we're going to pull up and we're just going to join them up and gather them. We could tie our hackle in at this point, but we're not going to. We're going to proceed to the rear of the fly where we're going to tie in our abdomen. So we're going to do touching turns right to the point of the hook. And now we're going to apply some dubbing. The dubbing that we're using today is a dubbing produced by a friend of mine in Pennsylvania. His name's Jack Fields, and it is electric wool in butterscotch, like an orangey hue. It's a natural material, natural wool. It's got a little bit of synthetic flash in there. We're using it without the flash, so we're going to be preening this out, getting a bunch of these long fibers. You can tell that it's quite long. You can use it long, or you can shred it quite easily. And we're going to shred it. We're just going to paint this thread and create a really uniform dubbing noodle by shrouding our thread. So we're really just trying to colour the thread, and that's the point of using the orange thread in A dot. It's going to show through this material when it gets wet, either when we apply floatant or when we get the fly wet. Grab a little bit more of that dubbing, shred it, and you can add more, but it's always difficult to remove once you've added too much, so err on the side of caution. If you think you've got enough, you've probably got too much. So the reason we stopped at the point of the hook is so that we have some bare bare thread that we can now carry that to the rear and start our dubbing exactly where we want to start it. And if we like, we can just make doubly sure by coming around the back of the tails again and snugging that thread wrap up, that these stay in place and maintain that nice position. Now we're just going to get our post and pull it forward so it stays out of the way. And to begin with, I'm going to cant my thread forward at this sort of angle. And by coming forward at this angle and leaving a little bit of space in between the wraps, I like the look of the thread peeking through. You can see how sparsely that is dubbed. You can dub this material down to 24, 26 easily. It's a little bit coarser than super fine. We're going to come upright now and start coming upright more. And as we come perpendicular to the shank, we're building our carrot shape, butting each turn up to the last turn. We're keeping things nice and slender and a nice long abdomen. So there we have it. So we have our carrot shape. We've got a little bit of segmentation there because it's quite tightly dubbed, and we've got some thread showing through. Now we're going to tie in our hackle. The hackle we'll be using is a Hebert minor, Whitings Farms. It's a Grizzly variant and a saddle. It's a beautiful hackle, almost Cree-like. We're going to preen away some of the lower barbs, and we're just going to pull those away and expose some bare stem. Enough stem that we can bind it down all the way to the post and then slightly up the post. So we're going to travel forward so that we're not tying it onto a bare shank. Use that rule again of tying it in, holding it almost perpendicular. I'm going to do wraps all the way to the post, and then we're going to go past the post and do 2 turns and park the thread. And now when we pull this up, you'll notice that it changes the position of the hackle. So now we've got the shiny side facing us, and this is how we're going to post it. We're going to tie the hackle stem into the post and post at the same time. So basically just going up the post, touching turns. And we don't want to travel too far up because we want to keep this fly quite sparse. And back down, park our thread. For our thorax, we're changing the colour. We want a slightly darker hue, so we're using some more of Jack's dubbing. It's electric wool in earthen clay. And again, you can see the sort of flashy bits that we're trying to keep out of our fly. And we want to shred this nice and fine again and create a slightly juicier looking thorax than we have an abdomen. So we want to create a thicker noodle, and also the colour change is going to signify that transition between thorax and abdomen. And once we have that on there, dub tightly, proceed to the front just behind the eye, and now travelling to the rear, to the post, behind the post, and now our last wrap, we're going to come up in front, and instead of going over all the way and around, we're going to stop on the opposite side of the hook and come around the post towards us. So we're reversing our thread. See how it's going in a counterclockwise direction now? And we're just going to park that where it is. Now we're going to fatigue our hackle stem a little bit so that it's easier to wrap. And we're going to come around the post nearly all the way without any hackle barb spraying. And now we're going into our first turn. You can see that the hackle barbs are radiating out, and we're going to come once, twice, all the way around, and a third time for good measure. And that's enough. I mean, it's a slightly oversized hackle, intentionally oversized because we want it to look like a spinner wing. And now we're going to hold the hackle on the near side. We're going to come up and over that hackle and around the post, not trapping any hackle barbs, all the way around. Now we let the hackle jump up, and we're going to do one more turn underneath, all the way around, And now we're going to come over again, all the way around, and really snugging that up. We could just go forward now and tie off, but I want to show you what's going on. So I'm just going to try and pull everything back so that you can see what's going on. So now we're keeping maximum tension on, because that's what's tying our hackle down around the post. And we're going to cut across our dubbing and reverse our thread again. And before we release the tension, we're going to build a neat little head, about half a dozen or so turns. And we can just sort of massage everything back down into place, or we can fiddle with that later. But at this point, we want to get in there and we want to trim off our hackle. And that's good for a ton of other flies with that amount of hackling. And you've got to remember, with the hackle, it's only the last few turns that are doing all the lifting, that are in contact with the actual water. Let me just grab the hackle and explain why we went in a counterclockwise direction. So we went in a counterclockwise direction because, as you can see, that's how the hackle is wrapped if it's in a clockwise direction. If we were now using our thread, imagine my scissors tips were my thread, and the thread was to come in here, they're going to catch and get trapped and act like grappling hooks. But we've gone on a counterclockwise fashion, so the opposite direction, and you can see the way the hackle comes off. When our thread comes over to go into a whip finish now, they're simply going to glide away and get out of the way. That's in a perfect world, so let's see if it's going to play out the way we intend it to. So we flatten our thread to go into a whip finish, pull them up, here we go, pull the thread up, create our coat hanger, and we're just going to come up and over one turn. See how they're jumping out of the way? 2 turns, 3 turns. Even if you do trap 1 or 2, you can always free them up. So we're just going to pull that up, cinch it down, do a push cut, and there we have it, a simple, neat little sparse parachute. Trim that to about the length of the abdomen. It's nice and skinny. You can see that there's no hackle barbs trapped whatsoever, and it's nice and sparse. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please subscribe. Click on the bell if you want to be notified when there's new content. And I'm going to leave any information pertaining to this video in the details below the video, including how you can reach out to Jack Fields and get some of this amazing dubbing. At the very least, do yourself a favour and check out Jack's Instagram account. He's an amazing fly tyer and always willing to share knowledge, which is something I really admire about him. He's a good friend. Thanks for watching.